Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, Israelis rush to choose a party to vote for as less than 12 hours remain ahead of Israel's third national election in under a year. Researchers at a northern Israeli institute say they're just weeks away from a vaccine for the coronavirus. And finally, you won't believe your eyes, but a brand new species has just been discovered by accident. And get this, it doesn't breathe oxygen. So stay tuned to find out more. 15 months of campaigning, 2 elections, 2 stalemates, and billions of shekels in taxpayer funds later, and all of this has led us to today. But with polls predicting yet another draw less than 24 hours before Israel's third consecutive vote, the parties are fighting as hard as ever to gain an edge over their competition. It ain't over till it's over has never been more true as the third Israeli election since April 2019 comes to a head. And both incumbent Prime Minister Netanyahu and rival Benny Gantz are at the top of their mudslinging game, each accusing the other of being unfit for office and incapable of tying together a 61-seat coalition. Speaking to Israeli News, Gantz calls Netanyahu's recent attacks the lowest of the low, while claiming that he'll win because Israelis are ready for a change. Gantz also says that he will not sit with a joint Arab list, nor with Netanyahu in any future coalition, though he is reportedly still open to a unity government with the Likud party. Netanyahu, on the other hand, insists that Gantz has no chance at forming a coalition without the help of the joint Arab list, which is expected to grow even larger after Monday's vote.
אתם רואים את זה? זו האמת. זו האמת. גנץ לא יכול להגיע לממשלה, הוא לא יכול להגיע לממשלה בלי טיבי. הוא לא יכול, זאת עובדה. זו עובדה מתמטית. זו לא עובדה אחרת. זאת האמת. ואת האמת הזאת מנסים להסתיר, ואני מבקש מכם את האמת הזאת לספר. משום שמה שעומד על הפרק זה דבר אדיר. אנחנו בטווח נגיעה מניצחון ענק. Anak.
Netanyahu then adds that even Gantz's party members have doubts, following the firing of Blue and White Party advisor Israel Bachar, who was recorded bad-mouthing Chairman Benny Gantz. The Israeli premier says that Bachar was fired for speaking the truth. Bachar later recanted, however, and Gantz is arguing that he was entrapped. Now finally, Netanyahu himself is fighting secret recordings, as Likud party aide Natan Eshel is heard saying that hatred for the press and for the system, etc., is what unites the right-wing voters under the Likud, and that it's this hatred that the Likud actually campaigns on. So still, it's anyone's guess what will happen on voting day. So, you want to vote in Israel, to do your civic duty. But there are just too many parties. Which one do you choose? Well, with just a day left now before Israel's landmark third consecutive election, we'll help you figure it out. ILTV's Nittany Manson has the political breakdown.
In Israel's parliamentary system, citizens at the ballot box on Monday will cast their votes for parties, not people. And while there are dozens of political factions, only 8 are expected to pass the electoral threshold. So who are these parties, what do they stand for, and how many of the 120 seats in the Knesset are they each expected to get? Well, first off, we have Likud, headed by incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And this flagship secularist party typically falls on the so-called right of the political spectrum, but mostly because of its alliances. It's expected to earn about 35 seats in the Knesset. Now, Likud also advocates for a free capital market, justice system reforms, and tough security. And Netanyahu says he supports a 2-state solution in theory, but he draws a hard line regarding any territorial concessions. In fact, with the U.S.'s New Deal of the century basically supporting him, Netanyahu is again pushing to extend full sovereignty to Israeli outposts and settlements beyond the Green Line. But PM Netanyahu is also set to face a trial after the elections over 3 corruption investigations, and there's no telling exactly how these charges will affect Likud's bottom line. Next, let's talk about Yamina, or the Right Party. This political coalition is made up of the Jewish Home, National Union, and the New Right parties, and it's expected to take home roughly 8 Knesset seats under Chairman and Defense Minister Naftali Bennett. Now, not all 3 parties on this union see eye to eye in every topic, but they do all oppose President Trump's peace plan outright, while advocating instead for full settlement annexations and more aggressive military retaliation against terror groups like Hamas. Where they disagree most is on the separation of religion and state, where some members try to separate more between the two, other strong voices in the faction believe more religious oversight should be implemented. And now, to finish off the right-wing parties, let's turn to the religious Shas and United Torah Judaism. Both parties essentially care only for maintaining the status quo when it comes to Jewish religious issues, like keeping Haredim out of the army and improving funding for ultra-Orthodox families. Shas, however, is under Interior Minister Aryeh Deri and is typically supported by Sephardic or Middle Eastern Orthodox Jews, while the United Torah Judaism, under Health Minister Yaakov Litzman, is supported by Ashkenazim, or Jews of more European descent, and they're expected to earn 8 and 7 Knesset mandates respectively. Okay, so turning now to the opposition. Let's begin with the Likud's main rival, the center-left Blue and White Party, headed by former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz. Coming in at second place with a predicted 33 Knesset seats, the party advocates for introducing prime ministerial term limits, barring indicted politicians from serving in the Knesset, and amending the nation's state law to include Israeli minorities. Blue and White also vows to take a stronger action against terror, to invest in early education, expand healthcare, and re-enter negotiations with the Palestinian Authority under the auspices of the United States Peace to Prosperity or Middle Eastern Peace Plan. On other issues, however, there is still some dissent in the ranks, as ultimately Blue and White is a conglomerate of the Israel Resilience Party, the Telem Party, and Yesh Atid. Moving on, we have the Labor Gesher Meretz Party, considered the flagship of the left. Now, these parties united in January 2020 after an abysmal performance in the previous 2 elections, but together they're expected to get around 8 Knesset seats under the leadership of Amir Peretz. As for policy, the Unity faction hopes to increase the minimum wage to 40 shekels an hour, construct 200,000 public housing units, and increase funding for public health care. The party also supports the formation of a Palestinian state, more minority rights, and higher taxes on the rich. Now, next up is the Joint Arab List, headed by Ayman Odeh. This party combines 4 major Arab-Israeli parties, Hadash, Ram, Balad, and Tal, and it's the only faction campaigning on representing the Arab community. But while the Joint List does support a 2-state solution, as well as Arab and minority rights, many members of the list have been embroiled in scandal over support for Palestinian terrorism. And many Arab Israelis opt to vote for other parties like Meretz or Blue and White over the perception that the Joint List is more interested in fighting for the Palestinians and for their own personal agendas than for the Arab Israelis in their voter base. Still, the Joint Arab List is expected to get 13 seats in the next parliament, cementing it as the 3rd largest party once again. And finally, we have the Israel Beitenu party under former Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, which has yet to endorse either left or right. And again, the party is predicted to take upwards of 7 seats in the Knesset, making it the deciding vote in the coalition talks for the 3rd time in a row. Now, historically, this party has been considered right-wing, but since late 2018, Lieberman has taken a hard stance on diminishing the strength of religious parties in the government and pushing for a secular unity government between Likud and Blue and White. But Lieberman is also a strong advocate for drafting ultra-Orthodox Jews into the military, allowing business to open on the Sabbath, and reducing the rabbinate's authority over marriage, divorce, and other life events. Israel Beitenu also advocates for the creation of a Palestinian state that would include the exchange of some Arab towns in Israel for Jewish towns in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank. Well, I could go on for days, but I'll wrap up here, so make sure to get out and vote.
And now here with more on the elections, just 12 hours ahead of Israel's 3rd consecutive national vote in a year, we're joined by none other than columnist for Newsweek and the editor of HistoryCentral.com, Mark Schulman, and the founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman. Thank you both so much for coming in.
Good to be with you.
Now, Mark, I actually want to start with you. What are your latest predictions with just hours to go?
I predict we'll end up exactly where we were last time. Maybe the Likud will get one more seat. I think there'll be maybe one change in the gush. It's really hard to say. This is an election of turnout. We really have no idea. For a while, it looked like for a couple of days, Likud was on a run and was starting to get closer, but that seemed to have switched around Friday. I think Netanyahu probably oversold the fact that he was in the lead, and he scared enough people on the left to think, well, maybe we should come out. Almost everybody I've spoken to in the last 2 or 3 days who previously had voted for other parties, I mean, people who are on the left side or center or whatever, who voted for other parties other than Blue and White, who voted for Meretz or Labor or even the Mishutaf, almost every single person I've spoken to in the last 3 days has said they're going to Blue and White, primarily because of the scare that Netanyahu gave. Right. So he may have doubly caused his own downfall if it ends up that way. On one hand, on the Arab vote by getting the Arab vote up, which is what he's done the last election, and then we'll see what happens this time, and by getting the left suddenly to be very scared and worried by trying to push the right and saying just a little bit more, we'll get there. He may have gotten the other side all involved.
Well, you know, the real unknowns here is what's going to happen with Lieberman. whether the electorate finally will come to its senses and punish Lieberman for being the basic or the principal factor that's responsible for these repeated elections. Because if it wasn't for Lieberman, if Lieberman had basically honored his pledge in the first election, there would have been a government. And basically what Lieberman is doing now is holding the country to hostage, because it's almost inconceivable that he could join a government that is dependent on merits and certainly dependent on the Arabs, whether it's their tacit or active support. So Lieberman is one of the big unknowns. The other thing is whether at the last minute Netanyahu will manage to convince in the next few hours Otzma Israel to withdraw from their thing, because they could easily pull in a mandate, or maybe two mandates, which would be lost. So I think what we're seeing though is this sustained support for Netanyahu is a massive vote of non-confidence, of no confidence in the law enforcement agencies here. Because this is most remarkable. The man, Netanyahu, has indictments against him, and he's stronger, if not stronger than ever, and certainly by far and away the favorite, the preferred candidate for prime minister.
All right, well, something you've both touched on is actually the Arab Joint List, which is looking to get stronger now. It's already the third strongest party. It's looking to gain even more seats, more votes in the Knesset after this election. Now, you mentioned that Netanyahu is essentially strengthening them with his rhetoric. Could that be, and I'm thinking way out into the conspiracy theories at this point, but could it be that Netanyahu is intentionally giving rhetoric to strengthen the Arab parties that, in a sense, weakens the left-wing bloc?
No, I don't think so, because let's look at it this way. The issue is turnout. In other words, the turnout amongst the Arab Israelis vote 85% for the joint list. Only about 15% vote for other parties. So what's been happening...
Which says a lot about the Arab vote.
What's been happening is the fact is that by Netanyahu's rhetoric, he's been turning up the number of Arab Israelis that have turned out. They grew to 67%, almost equivalent to the Jewish turnout in this last election. The general sense is they're going to come even higher this time. So no, I don't think there's a conspiracy theory here. I think the reality is he used them as a method of trying to show that he's Mr. Right, etc. Right wing, I mean, right in that sense. And it's boomerang in the sense that they become stronger and stronger. I mean, the whole irony of all of this is, remember the fact that the reason the joint list even exists is because Lieberman was trying to get rid of some of the Arab parties. And the result, they came together as a joint list. And then as a joint list, they become stronger and stronger. So I think we're going to see them stronger. And I think, quite honestly, one of the scenarios is clearly the fact that a Gantz government will start with their abstaining on the outside. I think people don't understand the Israeli system to understand.
What government would that be?
I don't think that people understand the way the system works in this country. Once the government is voted in, as long as it passes a budget, you can't vote it out unless you have an alternative government in mind. So the reality is they won't be dependent on their vote. Once they know that all they have to do is get in and pass a quick budget, and then they're in for a year, and so nothing else can happen.
But what government is Gantz going to put together? Gantz cannot put a government together without the support, either explicit or implicit, of the Arabs. Now, for Lieberman to go along with that, that's really suicide. He said he wouldn't. Gantz said time and time again he won't set up a government with the passive or active support of the Arabs. How is he going to form a government? How is he going to form a government? You know, the question is if the Likud strengthens now, and there will be, and Lieberman is weakened, there'll be tremendous pressure on him.
I want to understand what's wrong with the passive support of the Arabs.
I'll tell you what's wrong with it. The Arab list shouldn't even be able to run because their platform violates the letter and the spirit of the basic law, because they explicitly state they're against Israel as the nation state of the Jews. I'm surprised that you even...
It'll be very interesting to see tomorrow what the results end up actually being and to see whether or not this math actually checks out. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have. Gentlemen, thank you so much again for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, with the discovery of Israelis infected by coronavirus returning from Italy, the Israeli Health Ministry is now again upping its fight against the spread of this plague. This time by ordering Rambam Medical Hospital in Haifa to establish an isolation center while publishing a list of places visited by the infected Israelis from the flight from Italy. Anyone who flew into Israel from Italy with the infected individuals on February 22nd EasyJet flight U24849, as well as anyone who visited the same places as those infected individuals have since then, must go into immediate quarantine. This is the latest ruling that could send hundreds, if not thousands, of Israelis into isolation. And the list of problematic spots includes a restaurant, a cafe, a supermarket, a sporting goods store, an electronics store, and more. While one of the infected Israelis in question, who was aboard the flight from Naples, Italy, has since published an apology explaining that he had no idea he was a carrier at the time. But it's too little too late. 7 Israelis are now confirmed to have coronavirus, and borders are closing. Israeli airline El Al has also already suspended flights to Italy and Thailand and is worried about having to lay off 1,000 workers to absorb the massive losses in revenue. That's 1/6 of the company's total staff. As for other businesses that are taking a hit, Israeli musician Lior Narkis has also now canceled his upcoming shows because he himself has entered isolation after potentially catching the virus with his kids from a costume shop located by Ben Gurion Airport.
כפי שפורסם בתקשורת בדקות האחרונות, אני אכן נמצא לצערי הרב בביתי בבידוד, החל מהיום בצהריים, לאחר שביקרתי במהלך השבוע עם ילדיי בפיראט האדום. אז את חג פורים, אמנם החג האהוב עליי, אני הולך להפסיד ואת כל החגיגות וההופעות, אבל הבריאות שלכם ושל משפחתי ושל כולנו חשובה לי יותר מהכל.
All right, in related news, nearly 3,000 people have now died of the coronavirus, with another 82,000 infected. So Israel is not the only one on the defensive when it comes to dealing with the spread of the disease. In fact, Israeli researchers say that they may even have a vaccine ready within the next few weeks. And ILTV's Nittany Manson has the details.
A vaccine for the deadly and novel coronavirus. It seems so far away, yet one may be available within just the next 90 days, thanks to researchers at the Israeli Migal Galilee Research Institute. According to a press release from Israeli Science and Technology Minister Ophir Akunis, Israeli scientists at Migal have formulated the vaccine based on their research for a vaccine against the infectious bronchitis. And if all goes as planned, the finished coronavirus vaccine would be available in every marketplace worldwide soon after. But wait, there's more. Israeli biomed firm Batam Advanced says it's developed an all-new coronavirus diagnostic kit that gives results in as little as 25 minutes. And after testing the kit across several labs and hospitals, Batam says it will begin production ASAP from its Rome facilities. Meanwhile, Israeli government and health authorities are again calling on the nation to exercise extreme caution with respect to the virus's spread. Prime Minister Netanyahu is reminding citizens that anyone with any signs of the virus should call health services immediately for advice, and Israeli hospital staff are likewise participating in a new InnoNation social project where they're giving advice to coronavirus patients from all around the world.
Now, in other news, in spite of fears of coronavirus and the closing of Israel's borders, 40,000 people still flooded into Tel Aviv for the annual Tel Aviv Marathon. But that's not the only major marathon news coming from the Jewish state this weekend. With nearly a full minute lead over second place, Israeli runner Lona Chemtai Salpeter has just taken first at the annual Tokyo Marathon on Sunday. And while she was at it, she set a new women's record for the course at just 2 hours 17 minutes too. But that's not all. Salpeter's time in Japan also breaks the Israeli national record, which Salpeter also set, by over 2 minutes, making hers the 8th best women's marathon time in history. So what does this mean? Well, with this latest gold medal, the Kenyan-born Salpeter is guaranteed a spot back in Japan in July at the 2020 Olympic Summer Games. Moving on, this next story is bound to put a smile on your face. An all-new dental clinic in the city of Ashdod is now opening, and it's dedicated to being as accessible as possible for Israeli kids with disabilities. Here to give us the scoop is Israeli interior and product designer Amit Israel. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Ron. Nice to meet you.
It's my pleasure.
Nice to be here.
Tell me about this clinic, how did you get involved?
I got involved after the healthcare of the municipality of Ashdod got in touch with me after I did some other project for Ashdod municipality. And they knew that I did already some disabled people places, like...
places accessible.
Places accessible for disabled people. Mm-hmm. So they touched me and they contacted me in order to design this special clinic, special dentist clinic, in order to be suitable for the disabled people.
So what exactly is it about this clinic and your designs in this clinic that make it more accessible than any other clinic in Israel?
First of all, the major idea of dentist clinic is something that it's get you very nervous about, and normal people are getting very nervous to go to see a dentist. So especially for disabled people, it can be very stressful.
Especially for disabled children.
Yeah, especially for disabled children. So we came up with the idea of a concept that it will be very calm in order to make it as calm as possible, and that they will feel less stressless, and that they will feel that something is hugging them, and that at the moment they will be with their mouths open, they will see a light sky with blue colors.
Calming and, you know.
Calming that will get you to feel more calm as much as possible.
So now, is this clinic going to be open to like all kids in all of Israel? It's really just for Ashdod?
Now, at the moment, it's for Ashdod, but people from all around the area can come and can get treatment over there.
And do you have plans to maybe expand or do more designs like this in other cities around the country?
I would be glad to do that.
It's amazing. Amit, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right, now you may want to think twice before you pour yourself that next glass of milk. An Israeli scientist claims that he has found tiny pieces of plastic in 3 different kinds of milk, and experts are concerned about the long-term implications on your health. Microplastics are tiny plastic particles that are less than 5 millimeters long, and they usually form when plastic waste is washed into oceans and rivers and begins to break down. But today, they've found their way into almost every ecosystem on Earth, including the products that we consume like salt, fish, and beer. And they're so hard to see, actually, that they could even be in the air that we breathe. Now, Israeli Dr. Noam Vanderhal from the University of Haifa has found that 3 different brands of milk in Israel sold in totally different packaging also contain microplastics. And he even visited a dairy farm and took samples from one of the large tanks where the milk is held before being distributed to buyers. Still, Dr. Vanderhal suspects that the bottling process is the main source of contamination, since the milk tested after having been packaged contained more microplastic particles. So what does this mean for our health? Should we stop drinking milk? Today, there haven't been any findings showing that consuming microplastics directly harms human health, but the damaging impact on marine organisms is becoming more apparent. And the research around microplastics is alarming. A recent study has revealed that each Israeli consumes around 2,000 pieces of microplastic each year, and the question now is what the world needs to do about it. Now here is a very bizarre story. Israeli researchers have made an accidental discovery that is completely shaking how scientists view the animal world. They've just discovered a creature that doesn't need oxygen to breathe.
This tiny salmon parasite called the Heneguia salminicola is a relative of the jellyfish and corals, but unlike its cousins, it apparently gave up breathing oxygen to be able to produce more energy. So why is this so groundbreaking? Well, until now, breathing oxygen has been considered something that every animal and human on Earth does, but this discovery shows that evolution can go in a very strange direction. According to the researchers from Tel Aviv University's School of Zoology, it's generally thought that organisms become more complex during evolution. But this animal has evolved in the opposite way. It has actually shed unnecessary genes responsible for breathing oxygen because of how much energy it consumes in doing so. So therefore, this Israeli team is showing that this organism actually became simpler over time. Talk about a bizarre find.
All right, now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy and cool, and with an average low of 49 degrees Fahrenheit or 9 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow should be partly cloudy again, but with a slight chance of scattered rains and a high of 64 or 18 degrees Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. Now what you're seeing here is the first ever recorded sighting of an orca whale off of the coast of Israel. Apparently it got lost on its way to Iceland, but that's just more good news for us, I guess, and whale watchers in the Israeli coast. But all right, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.49 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for watching.